Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muliwanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name's Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so honored and so delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Anita Saxana. She is here to celebrate Double Axel or Nothing. It's her debut middle grade novel. Before we invite Anita into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Astra, The Lonely Airplane by Julie Whitney. This book is truly a labor of love. It was written by Julie after her husband lost his job as a pilot due to the pandemic. This rhyming picture book for children ages 3 to 10 teaches them about flying, math, geography, overcoming difficult situations, most of all, having hope. It comes with a 2-page glossary and a 3-minute video of Captain Dan giving kids a tour of the real Astra. It can be ordered online at Amazon and at bookstores from coast to coast and internationally. To learn more, please visit AstraTheLonelyAirplane.com. Joining us right now from Birmingham in the great state of Alabama, our guest is here today to celebrate her middle grade debut book. It's called Double Axel or Nothing. Please welcome to the show, Anita Saxana. Hey, Anita, how are you?
I'm doing so well. Thank you for having me this morning.
I'm excited to have you on. Double Axel or Nothing. This book, from what I understand, is set in the world of competitive figure skating. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Well, that's certainly a world that I am, other than watching it on TV, I'm completely unfamiliar with it. Tell us a little bit about that world, and then tell us a little bit about Double Axel or Nothing.
Sure. So I actually grew up as a competitive figure skater, and I'm a competitive figure skating instructor. And so I have experienced it as a child, teenager, and as an adult. And it is a world where it takes a lot of hard work, dedication, goal setting. There's so many positive things that an individual can gain from, pursuing the sport that can help you in other aspects of your life. But in our world of figure skating, the double axel jump is one of those jumps that if you can learn to land it and do it, it kind of takes you to that next level in competitive figure skating where you start pursuing triples or even quadruple jumps. But the tough thing about it is that the girls that have to do it are being asked to do it when they're only maybe 12 years old. Some of them are physically capable. Some of them are physically not capable. And it takes in a great amount of training, guidance from your coach, support from your family. And so the story is about a 12-year-old girl named Ruby Ronnie who wants more than anything to be a national champion like her idols Michelle Kwan and Alyssa Liu. But her coaches told her that she can't go to the regional championships if she doesn't have this jump because you need it to qualify. And so she's been beating herself up about it for the past 17 months. She can't do it. And I think sometimes it doesn't matter if it's figure skating or any walk of life, that if we have something that we're trying to do and we're having trouble achieving it, we start to have negative self-talk. And often it's just our own mind and our own thoughts that are bringing us down or preventing us from achieving what we're striving for. And so that's kind of what this book is about. And it's also about just that sometimes when you are reaching for a dream, not everybody will understand it. And just learning how to pursue something you believe in, even when you feel like you're not being supported.
Yeah. One of the things that I understood is my daughter, when she was growing up as a competitive dancer, is that the kids who are competing on this level, and especially it seems like it's like young women, in whether it's dancing or figure skating, they have to make a lot of choices, a lot of sacrifices that that a lot of folks don't understand. A lot of their classmates don't understand. A lot of their family members don't understand. Do you think that there's too much pressure put on some of these young competitors at a young age?
I think there definitely can be. I think there is a positive way to approach it, and then there's also a negative way. I think the reason anyone participates in a sport is it should be fun, and it should have a positive impact on your life. When it gets to the point where it's causing a great deal of stress, or when it's affecting your ability to function, then it's not having that impact. But I think some things that athletes have to do so that they can perform optimally is going to bed on time. And sometimes that means as a kid, maybe you can't spend the night with your friend on a Friday night because you have to get up on Saturday to train. And I think it teaches you a lot the importance of time management and having a schedule, and taking care of yourself, eating healthy, getting enough rest. But I think some of the things that are sacrificed when you're pursuing a sport, especially at a competitive level, can be relationships, relationships with your family, relationships with friends. And I think that's where it takes a really good coach and support system to make sure that the athlete's still having that balance in their life, right? Because relationships are so important to the development of, our youth.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. You were talking about the character in your book kind of experiencing that negative talk, that self-doubt. It seems like, these competitors, they're doing incredible things. Even the kids who aren't at that national Olympic level, international level, they're still doing superhuman feats of athleticism, and they don't see themselves. They don't realize that they're doing something that few people can do.
Yeah, exactly. I've witnessed so many teenage girls, especially, they are beautiful, talented figure skaters, but because they can't get this one jump, they sum up their whole identity and their whole self-worth on the success of this one thing. And it's so important to have a mentor or a coach or a book or something to make you realize, like, hey, you need to step back and look, like, I'm a great figure skater, I'm a great basketball player, or I'm a great student, or I'm a great friend. And that has value. You can't put all your value in the success of one thing. Mm-hmm. And this story was really inspired by just me watching so many young teenage girls beat themselves up over not being able to do this jump.
Mm-hmm. Is this something that you experienced yourself when you were growing up on the rinks?
Oh, yeah, a little bit, because I don't think jumping was really my forte. The part of figure skating that I enjoy a lot is the theatrical and artistic side, and ice dancing, and pursuing just the development of skating skills. So in ice dancing, we do a lot of edge work and power work and quickness and artistry. And I do jump, but I definitely have had my own nemesis jump, and I definitely let it get in my head. And it takes a lot of just self-reflection to realize, like, hey, I'm still a figure skater. I'm still, my sport is worth something, even if I can't do a double axel or I can't do whatever your nemesis jump is. For me, it was a double flip, but
a double flip. I'm intrigued. You're not talking about like in the air, like the gymnastic. Yeah.
No, so we rotate vertically.
Oh, okay.
So it's where you would turn to backwards and you tap with your toe pick, and then you vault up in the air, and then you rotate 2 times and land on 1 foot.
I wouldn't be able to do that either. I have a question. This is going to be, it's from out of left field, but I haven't ever had a chance to really sit down with a competitive figure skater to ask, how in the world, when they start to spin and they go faster, and it doesn't look like they're moving their body at all. It's just like they start to spin and their arms come in, and then suddenly they're going like 1,000 rotations a minute. And it doesn't look, there's like nothing propelling them.
Yeah. So what happens is, the law of physics, right? Centripetal force. Like if you bring in your mass closer to your body, right, it accelerates the spin. And then also what our blade is doing, it's actually making a circle on the ice. And when you hit that sweet spot on your blade, that circle becomes tighter and more centered. And so that also helps accelerate the spin if you're on the right part of your blade and on the correct edge. And if you have a strong position. So if you're kind of noodly with your body, that's when the spin decelerates. But if you hold yourself really strong and still, like you were saying, then the spin will actually accelerate.
So that foot that's touching the ice, it's not just there spinning a hole into the ice, it's actually turning around and around?
Yeah, it's etching a circle on the ice. So when you skate, your blade is actually melting the ice. Mm-hmm. And the blade has two edges. It kind of looks like, let's say, a half sun. And there's an edge here and an edge here. And so you can be on one edge or the other edge, or you can skate on both edges, which we call it a flat. So based on what edge you're on and how your body is leaning and aligned over it, you're basically etching arcs and circles on the ice. So there's a lot of geometry in skating. And we study a lot of the tracings that we do on the ice to help analyze, like, well, why didn't that spin quite work? Or why was that jump a little off?
Wow. This is so, we've had our Dean of all things STEM and STEAM, Jennifer Swanson, on talking about the secret science of sports. We didn't get into this aspect of skating on this level. It's fascinating, and it's just another great reminder that sports can be a great entryway into all sorts of other aspects of life and study.
Yeah. I mean, we teach the kids, we're teaching them geometry and physics and so many different things that they don't even realize that they're learning, and maybe it will, pique their interest to pursue, like science or math.
Yeah. What was it that inspired you to write for this middle grade audience?
Well, skating's just always been a passion of my life. And so I just feel like I've just experienced so much and seen so much and learned so much. But I also just love middle grade stories. I love how there's just so much heart in them, and they're often about friendships and relationships. They tend to always have a happy ending, which I like.
Yeah. I like happy endings too. And I didn't realize it until recently. There were a couple of books by authors that I really liked that just kind of ended. And it was like, I went on a long journey. I'm really kind of bummed out right now.
Yeah, you want to feel satisfied at the end. And I just always feel middle grade stories are so heartwarming, and they have such a satisfied ending, and they give you that warm, fuzzy feeling.
Yeah. Hey, what kind of challenges that are kind of universal to kids, what other kind of challenges that are universal to kids did you address in Double Axel or Nothing?
Sure. So I think a couple challenges. I think one is, like you said, for athletes, oftentimes they feel isolated and they don't maintain those friendships. So I think any child can relate to, like, especially if you've just moved to a new school or something, like feeling like you don't have a friend. So just, finding good friends. The other thing is, being able to communicate with your parents, like what it is that you want to do, or what it is that you want to pursue, or why something matters to you. I feel like that communication between, children and parents is so important. Sometimes those conversations don't happen, and then assumptions are made, and then miscommunications happen, and the child feels unsupported, or the parent feels like, it's just a lot of miscommunication. So there's a lot of that. I think we talk a lot about goal setting, not just in sports, but in life. But also just the whole idea of gratitude, that, be grateful for just the things that you're blessed with in your life, and, don't get so focused in on how many points can I score in that game and lose sight of just, that you have a family, or you have food, or you have things that you should be grateful for. So,
yeah. I guess that's really important for kids, especially who are competing on these really high levels. it takes a tremendous amount of sacrifice for the kid, but also for the family, because it can be very expensive.
Yeah, yeah. And, we talk a lot just when we have shop talk amongst coaches that, obviously, if a kid is talented, if they have, some athletic ability innately, that's great. If the kid is willing to work hard, that's very important. But having a supportive family, and then the finances do play a role, unfortunately, in sports like figure skating or competitive dance, and then also having the right coaching team in place. So when you have all those things happening, that's when you have, I guess, the right ingredients to develop a skater like Nathan Chen.
Mm-hmm. There are two questions I have. One is, how can families, you talked about how important it is for a skater, a dancer, a soccer player to have that mentor, that coach that can help them kind of put things in the proper perspective. How can parents play that role? And also, how can parents judge whether or not their kid's coach has their kid's best interest at heart, and they're not just looking for the next win or to develop the next champion?
Yeah, no, those are really good questions. So I think one thing is, as the child is learning the sport, it is so important if the parent can also be invested in learning the sport. So by what I mean by that is, like, if the kid comes home and is like, Mom, I learned how to do a bunny hop today. Well, the parent doesn't really know what that was, or at what point in the group lesson or private lesson that bunny hop happened, but maybe you look it up on YouTube. Or, ask your kid to demonstrate it. This is what a bunny hop is, and just understanding, what that is. So then when your child says, I scored a 2-pointer, or I did a bunny hop, that you can relate to what they're saying, and then understand, like where they're at, skill wise, and what the next step is for them. So you can support them in what that next step is. So I think that's really important. As far as just like, is your coach the right coach for your child? I think having open communication with the coach about where your child is at right now, what are the goals, and then what will it take to reach that goal? And if you feel like that's something realistic for you and your family to pursue.
Yeah, I think that's important. And having those conversations too with our kids is important right from the start. If a family is starting out with sports camp, whatever, and they know that they have limited resources, what kind of conversations should they have with their kids kind of early on? Like, hey, I'm really glad you like this, but you got to understand we have a lot of bills, and we can help you get a scholarship, but boy, we just can't afford the 100 hours a season of private lessons.
Yeah. So, I'll share my own personal story. When I grew up, my parents got me one lesson a week. Mm-hmm. And then we had what they call like season passes to public sessions. So public sessions are like where anybody can go skate and do anything. That's not typically where a competitive figure skater trained. But my parents were like, this is what we can give you, and then you can do with it what you will. And so that taught me in a really young age that, look, like if I want to be able to do an Axel jump or double Salchow, I've got to really listen to what my coach is saying, take really good notes. So throughout the week when I don't have a coach, I can look back at what he or she said, and I've got to learn how to structure my own practice time. So I think sometimes when you have a coach saying, well, you need so many private lessons, I'm not saying that they're not important and that you don't need private lessons, but at the same time, sometimes the child loses that ability to structure their own training time. And I think that's so important that if you put a kid out on the field or for the basketball hoop or on the ice, that they know how to practice on their own. Or similarly, like, kids that can sit down and know, like, I have these homework assignments to do tonight, and that they can sit down and take initiative and do it. So I think that balance has to be made where the parents, like, this is what we can do for you. And if this is what your goal is, this is what you'll have to do. Or you might have to change your goal.
Yeah. Neat. We love asking authors what kind of conversations they imagine families can have if they're reading or co-reading Double Axel or Nothing together.
Yeah, I think one conversation that a parent can have with their child is, do you have, what are your dreams? What are your goals? Let's make a list. And one thing that the main character does that she's advised to do with her sports psychologist is, like, let's say your goal is you want to make straight A's next quarter. Well, what are 3 things that you can do to help you reach that goal? And so I think that's just, that'll open up communication. Sometimes kids are scared to vocalize what it is that they want to do. And I feel like it's so important that if you say a goal or a dream or you write it down, you're more likely to achieve it.
Yeah. I think that's so important. And I remember having conversations with my son when he was in middle school and just making lists when I don't know what to decide. Should I do this or that? Let's pros and cons. Let's sit down, make the list and make the analysis.
Yeah, I think that's great.
So now that your debut middle grade book is out there and people are loving it, what's next for Anita Saxena?
So I have a young adult novel. It's called Daniel on Thin Ice. It's in the editorial phase right now. I hope for it to release that at the end of this summer. But it's about a competitive ice dancer who's pursuing his dream to be on Team USA. But unfortunately, he makes some decisions where he is not honest with his family or friends about what his feelings are.
Fascinating. Hey, one last question. It might not be the last question, but we'll see. We heard a lot of controversy in the past few weeks around figure skating at the Winter Games. And a lot of that conversation was that kids, maybe it's not appropriate for a 15-year-old or 14-year-old to be competing at the Olympic level. What do you think about that?
So I think it might be like this in all sports, but what I've noticed in figure skating, so I started in 1991, and in the 90s, no girls did quads, right? Couple men did quads. So over the decades, equipment's gotten better, training techniques have gotten better, injury prevention, rehab, all that's gotten better, right? So I have noticed, and I've said this to people before, I don't know if they should call the event ladies figure skating, because the things that they are being asked to do on a technical level, only young girls can do because they haven't developed yet, right? They're very thin and they don't have hips. And so, and I guess if you talk to different people, they're going to have different opinions. So I feel like on a technical level, what we're asking the athletes to do, especially young girls, it's just physics, right? Like if you need to rotate really fast, jump up high enough and do forward rotations in the air, well, there's only certain body types that can do that. But whereas ladies figure skating, right, where you actually have an 18-year-old athlete or a 20-year-old athlete that has the normal body of a lady and they cannot do a quad. And the scary thing is, unfortunately, like in Russia, they're giving their young girls, medications and drugs or whatnot to keep them a certain size so they can do it. And you notice none of their athletes have any longevity, right? The girls who won the Olympics at the last round, they're not skating now and they're not doing quads or triples at the competitive level, right? So I do think that it's something that needs to be addressed in our sport. I think there are a lot of people that feel very sorry for some of the athletes in these countries where the young girls don't have a choice. right? They have to do what their coach or their country is telling them to do, or they just move on to the next skater.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the United States, we have a little different approach to it. We see the benefit of sports, even if you're not at the elite level, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it helps the development of you mentally and physically and just teaches you so many great life skills. And I actually have a friend who used to skate competitively for Ukraine and Georgia. And, he said that over there, if you're a skater, you're only skating to go to the Olympics. And if you're not doing that, then why are you skating? So it's just a different mentality. So I don't know if I'm quite answering your question because it's a very complicated topic.
Well, no, it is a very complicated topic, and I think that's one reason I really don't have an opinion on it, because I don't know enough about it to really have an opinion. Yeah.
So I think it'll be interesting to see how everything plays out after the fact for this Olympics.
Yeah.
But I think, where my heart is just that, we need to be protective of our athletes and making sure they're in positive environments, because we want them to be healthy adults that feel good about themselves and aren't injured chronically and, can move on to whatever they would like to do later in life.
Absolutely. Well, I know people are going to want to know where they can go to find out more about Double Axel or Nothing and find out more about you.
Great. Yeah. So I have a website, anitasaxana.com. So there's information about Double Axel or Nothing over there. The book is available wherever you like to purchase books, whether that be online, or you can request it from your local independent bookstore, or you can request it at your local library.
Yeah. We've had a great time talking about the debut middle grade book, Double Axel or Nothing, from our guest, Anita Saxana. Anita, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. It was so much fun.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Actually, I should say, please join us for every episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We have so many amazing guests coming your way. In the next few weeks, we have Faith Goldstein coming back to the show. Siobhan Hong is coming back on the show. Bob Hartman, an internationally celebrated speaker and storyteller, will be on the show on the 16th. And on April 12th, we have Raffi. You don't want to miss any of these guests, so the best thing that you can do is to subscribe to the Reading with Your Kids podcast. You can subscribe at the iHeartRadio app on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Ghana, Himalaya, wherever you find your podcast. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, Anita Saxana. Please be sure to check out Double Axel or Nothing. Also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Skylar Strauss. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me, most of all. We also want to thank our sponsor, Astra, the Lonely Airplane by Julie Whitney. Find out all about this fantastic children's picture book at her website, astrathelonelyairplane.com. Most of all, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.